TikTok. It's time to rock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, if you aren't aware of who he is, he's been on the channel a few times. Louis from the Fairfield Guitar Company, brother. Good to have you on board with us.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. Appreciate it. You're very kind.
Louis, it is our pleasure, brother. We've been friends. We've been hanging out with each other for at least probably 12 months. You've been on the channel a couple of times.
You're correct.
You and I have made plans to do a couple of shows, but you know, this big world that we live in doesn't make it always that easy, bro, to kind of connect and get time zones and all that sorted, brother.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's been challenging, but we're here and I'm excited about it and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Fantastic, bro. Good to see you. I look forward to catching up with you during the course of the show to talk about what you've been doing with your company. I am always following you on Instagram.
Thank you.
You're on there connecting with people. If anybody is watching a replay and you don't have Louis's social media links, I will attach them on the description. And during the course of the show, I will attach his social media links in the chat as well. So go and find Louis, follow him, keep up with what he's doing, because my gosh, you are doing some great things for the community out there, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun. I've enjoyed this part of my growth experience, and it's led me to people like you and to Philip, who's going to be on the show with us, and meet some very, very cool people and work with some very, very nice people. So I'm blessed.
Fantastic, fantastic. That's what it's about, you know. I keep saying this to people that watch our channel. You know, we're not experts. We're far from experts. We're just fans, brother. You know, and we'll talk about this when we get Philip on. You know, we're taking advantage of technology. You and I have mentioned this before on a couple of shows, you know. Just imagine having something like this when we were young guys. You know, right? We just would have, this is science fiction, bro. This stuff in the 70s and 80s, to think that we could have done this back then.
Yeah, you're right. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who was mentioning how, you know, we used to learn records when we were learning guitar by ear. You'd either take the record, you know, the needle and bring it back, or in my case, rewind the tape. And then tablature came out, and everybody had to go learn their numbers again to learn tablature. And this is the new tablature. This is the way how we connect now is by having this modern technology of skipping the needle in a new kind of mentality, right?
Oh, bro, you got it. You got it. So look, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a special guest here to drop into the show for you to spend a bit of time with. I'm going to get Louis to introduce him. If you have any questions for our guest, and indeed for Louis, please ask them in the chat. And if you're watching on a replay and you have some questions, leave them in the comments, because I'm sure Louis and Philip will come back and answer them. When we get Philip in, we'll do a shout out. I'll get you to do a shout out if you've got the computer up and running there. If you can see the chat. Can you see the chat, Louis?
I can, yes.
Okay. Oh, awesome. I'll get you to do a shout out to folks after you've introduced this fine gentleman for us.
Mr. Philip Shouse. Hey.
Thank you, studio audience.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
Louis, good to see you again. Andrew, lovely to meet you, man. How are you guys?
Excellent. Blessed to be here with you.
Brilliant. Thank you for agreeing to take some time out of your schedule to hang out with us. It's always a pleasure, and we never take it for granted. So thank you, Philip.
Any chance to talk to you guys and talk about Van Halen is a good excuse. So
yeah,
happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, Phil, Andrew, if you're okay, I'll give a couple of words as to. You know, nobody really needs to know, but who Phil is, just for the people who are here.
Sure.
I met Phil maybe about a year ago when I was making some of the Van Halen type straps. We got together thanks to Jeff Goebel, who runs the Forever Unchained, and he's now moved up to the Van Halen news desk. He's a contributor there as well.
Wow.
And Philip purchased one of my dog collar straps, used it on tour with Accept. And Phil and I, bonded instantly, as we did with you and a bunch of other people, because of Van Halen, because of our relationship with Van Halen. Phil obviously has played with Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, Accept. He's now with Rock City Machine Company. He's currently on tour with Rodney Atkins. So he's live on location.
From Beaumont, from San Bernardino, California.
Oh, nice. Okay. Southern California.
Yeah, never mind. I was going to say some Frank's Apple there for you, but no.
You're going on in a couple of hours, correct?
Yeah, a few hours.
Yeah. So, I've known Phil because I'm a huge Kiss fan, and have known of himself and Ryan Cook, who's in Rock City Machine Company with him as well, and was instantly fans. And he was very kind to me, and we decided on working on a custom strap for him. And Phil designed it. It took me a couple months to get my head around it because he wanted some particular things. And I think we finally got it done, and he's using it on tour now, and it's available for purchase as we speak.
Fantastic. Thank you for saying that, Louis. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in any of those links, we'll attach them here on the description. That strap. I might even put that link now while you guys have a chat in the chat, Louis, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So. So I just, Phil, thank you again for being with us and taking some time. Tell everybody who's watching a little bit about yourself.
Well, Louis and I have known each other through Van Halen got us together. I'm a massive Van Halen fan. Andrew, we didn't even talk about this in the before the show talks, but I played Eddie in a tribute band in Nashville. God, it's been over 10 years ago now, which is wild, but it was called the Mighty Dan Halen.
Wow.
And there's some YouTube footage, and it was wigs and the whole deal, and it was a ball. It was so much fun doing that stuff. But yeah, it's been a long time. But we bonded over that. But I've been in Nashville since 2004, almost 20 years now.
Wow.
And I've done, all kinds of gigs, anything to keep busy. But, the Gene Simmons thing was kind of a big deal. The Ace Frehley band after that. I'm with Rodney Atkins currently, and I was with Rodney 7 years ago, country artist. And so I kind of went back doing that in the Mighty Accept as well. Just anything to keep busy. I had a popular show in Nashville that ran about 5 years weekly called The Rock and Roll Residency. With my buddy Jeremy Asbrock, and he was, he's also from Ace and Gene's band, and just any kind of find the Mighty Dan Halen. Man, my contacts are so bad. I'm trying to read the ticker down there, so you guys let me know if you can see if anybody's asking me anything. I apologize for my bad eyesight, but yeah, and I don't know. In a nutshell, I guess that's it. And about the strap, I did. Louis started making the Van Halen based straps, and the dog collar one was the one I always wanted. So I got that straight away. We became fast friends. And when he approached me to design a strap, I thought that would be amazing. And we didn't intend on making the world's most comfortable, coolest looking strap, but we kind of did accidentally. Seriously, when I got it. He sent me 2 prototypes, just one little difference in between the two, and I got them for Rodney Atkins rehearsals, and I unboxed them there. So brand new out of the box. They felt broken in immediately. We were doing 10, 12-hour day rehearsals, and I was amazed at the end of it how there was absolutely no pain in my shoulder or low back or anything. We really didn't intend on doing that, but we did. And so actually we're in works now. So that's the real one. I have the prototypes. That's the actual production
you don't have
model.
this one on there. That's right.
Nice. So we're actually in production in talks now with the musician's physician in Nashville that I go see about making a complete ergonomic strap that's also, looks cool, because there's some on the market, but they're just plain black.
Yeah.
And so we want to have some, something that looks nice and is eye catching, but it's also, not a cool shoestring Jimmy Page strap, which those are great, but come on, when you're almost 50, those things don't work anymore. But so I've never used a more comfortable strap. Yep, you can use them with heavy Les Pauls. They're great. They're fantastic. And and kind of the straps that are closest in quality and comfort are twice the price. Easy. So the price point's great too.
Yeah, no,
it's interesting. Sorry, Louis. It's interesting that you should say that about those guitar straps, because I bought a bass guitar strap a couple of years ago, and it's wide, to take the weight. But that's a good point about these comfortable straps, that are out there. They're boring as heck, Louis.
Well, so one of the real cool reasons of why I liked working with Phil is because he's very eclectic with his music. I understood him, or I got to really know him when he was with Accept. But when we talked about straps and inspiration, not only did Eddie come into it, but the Beatles came into it, and we would discuss the strap that was it Paul McCartney? Not Paul McCartney was using.
It was the John Lennon strap.
There was a John Lennon strap. There's a Vox strap.
The Python. The Python.
Vox Python, which I think that was his tour. It was the strap he used on the '65 tour, which is insanely heavy metal looking,
right?
For the time.
And
that guitar strap's got some homage to that Python on it, bro.
Exactly. That's it right there. That's what that is.
Yeah. And he requested some circles, so we did some different size circles.
I love the Dwayne Allman ring. Strap too. I had one of those and wanted to put that. I definitely wanted to have the John Lennon aspect on there, the Python thing too.
So we came up with this little shape here, which mimics my little signature end there. But I think that the not the challenging part, but the exciting part was that he wanted a wider strap than normal. But he also wanted it padded, that's what took me a while, is to really test out a couple of the padded with my leather people and my colleagues that work with me on the straps, is to really make it comfortable. So we padded it, from here to here. It's not, the whole strap is not padded. So the front part.
Sure.
Hold on, I got to go backwards here. The front part is not padded. You can see where the stitch comes there, and then the back part with the adjustment. And this is where the adjustment part comes. The other cool part about this one is because Phil plays flying V's and he wears his guitars a little bit lower. We had to make it a little bit longer than normal. I put it on the other day when I received the production, and it lets the guitar lay a little bit lower. I obviously tried it with a Les Paul too, which has a little bit of a different center of gravity on it. But it was comfortable low because you get that comfort, the wide strap on it. And I think the bad part about wide straps is it's associated to bass players because they have a lot of bigger instruments. But in that, heavy metal, let's say, more mentality, it's definitely out there. There's definitely a lot more of the wider straps available. So I was excited about doing it. Plus with all the history that he's had with the John Lennon, was it the Vox strap? The Python strap?
Vox Python,
yeah, that's right. And so, but you're absolutely right. When I first looked at it, and I've seen him play it before, but never really paid attention to it, I was like, that's pretty rock and roll. That's pretty heavy metal for 1965.
Really heavy, 65.
Yeah. And so, it's something I'm working on. I don't know, Phil, I don't think I told you yet, but I'm going to take the same shape and do it in a suede leather so we can test out some of the comfort for a couple of different things. So there's talks to do some different versions of it as well.
Yeah. A brown leather one I really wanted to do, something I could use here. These straps I use, actually, the straps I use for the Rodney gig, the country gig, are one of these and my dog collar strap, because I bring the Shark out. And so that's on my EV8 Shark guitar that I play in the country music show.
How cool is that? He's playing a country music show with the EV8 Shark. How great is that?
Crazy.
It's got rock ball. The show is full of rock balls. Yeah. I mean, it really is. I play screaming guitar solos in a third of the songs. Rodney loves it. It's a great rock and roll band, backing him up. It's country tunes. He may be a country on the radio, but, the way the band plays the songs, it's, classic rock, Southern rock, and plenty of good rock and roll elements in the show.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that. When you talk about the musicians that at least I work with, not that they're one track minded, but they're concentrated on one theme. And the reason I love Phil so much is because he's doing country, he's doing accept. He did it goes a little bit everywhere, and the professionalism of somebody to that level is just for me astounding. Like I wish I could do one of those things right. He's doing like 4 of them.
But I just do the same thing. Somehow it works. I don't know.
Wait, you played bass in Ace's band, correct?
I played bass in Ace's band, yeah.
So you do 2 things. You did bass, you did guitar.
It's
you're working it.
That's when you name all those gigs, it's like, it's country. It's like, well, I don't do anything different. I do the exact same. I'm a one-trick pony, but I can make the trick work in a lot of different situations. It just doesn't. I don't know. It feels the same to me. I don't know.
Well, it's if it comes easy for you, then that means you're a professional. I was thinking this morning. I posted a video this morning of me playing a Van Halen song. And I concentrated on my right hand because I remember as a 15-year-old sitting there and concentrating on string skipping.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I looked at the video this morning, going back to what you're saying, you're doing one thing, you're literally doing 50 million things that you don't understand because you're doing it so often that it becomes second nature to you. But I was saying to myself, I'm palm muting, I'm muting with my left hand, I'm skipping strings, I'm accentuating different frets or different notes.
Pick angle, everything.
You're doing 50 million different things that, for me at least, was practice when I was 15-year-old, and now comes easy because you're doing it so often. But you forget about the work that went into it. My dad used to have a saying. My dad built furniture for a living, and he says, "You don't pay me to build you this table. You pay me for all the tables that I ruined to get this one right." That's basically what you do. Is we all practiced when we were younger, but you don't get paid. You get paid because you practiced all those years, right?
Yeah, I'm getting paid for the years in high school where I did not do anything except sit in my room and learn tablature books. I'd get the Van Halen album books that had the albums from front to back and learn all that. The same thing, learning every single song in Guitar for the Practicing Musician and Guitar World, and then the Beatles big white Beatles scorebook. That thing, I just devoured that stuff.
Yeah. No, it's and back then you really had to, it's not like now, like Andrew, we were talking before about, these kids nowadays, and I don't want to, make it sound like they're not great, but they go on YouTube and learn a Van Halen song. And when I was younger, learning a Van Halen song coming from Kiss is like mind blowing because what is he doing? How's he doing it?
You're
now
trying to slow the record down, then it's half speed, so you had to play it higher. Me and the guys in the band were talking about this today, how it's and it's great, the guitar lesson thing, using the technology that we're on, it is amazing, but you're seeing exactly how somebody does it. There's a visual aspect that we didn't have. We only had the sound. So when you're trying to figure something out and you end up figuring it out wrong, that's something that you just figured out for yourself, and that is an element that has disappeared. Yeah. Not only with learning music and learning songs, but also with audio gear. Like when you're recording something and you got a compressor and you're like, well, I want to make the snare cut through. Oh, here's a preset called Make the Snare Cut Through. I'm going to choose that one. You don't learn how the knobs work.
Yeah.
You don't just go, well, I want to do this and then find something. Go, what's that? Oh, I'm going to use that instead. You can't, there's not this stumble along and invent something new. Yeah. Because you're trying to get somewhere else, and you're not using a manual.
I see it with this. So this is my little office, and I have a little. It's a Marshall Code 50. It's basically it's a preset amp. And I use it here because it's a small space, and my kids are next door, my wife's upstairs, and sometimes I can practice at night without making too much noise. But I have a tube amp, and when I turn on the tube amp, holy cow! It's if you don't know how to set it into the sound you want. Yeah. You got to do a little bit of work, but if the work was easy because we did it on stage, on the fly, 20 years ago, it's easy. But these young kids who have all these, these amps that have all these sounds on them do not know how to tweak an amp properly, and probably will never really understand what a real tube amp that moves your body will sound like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Kemper guy now, so I'm guilty of it too. But I definitely put my tube time, and I think, I don't know, from other guys that I've heard use Kempers, and like, I'm not bragging, but I think mine sounds pretty damn real.
It does.
And I think it's because of all that time, using it the right way, and having all that time with tube amps and being able to do that. But I haven't played through tubes and I can't remember I don't know when.
It's funny. I remember when we met in New York City, I was getting nervous because we went to lunch. I met Phil a couple of months back, and we went.
He took me for. I think we had 2 meals or 3 meals, and I had pizza at 3 different places.
Then we had coffee. He brought me an Italian coffee. But I was getting nervous because I'm like, "Do you need to go back for sound check?" And he's like, "Nope, it's all Kemper. It's through the PA. It's done. Once you do it the first time." And I was like, "Whoa," And I was like, "Okay, let's grab a coffee." Like, if there's no rush.
And they sound
but that blew
great.
my mind.
And they really, I mean, you saw the show. It sounds monstrous.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, Wolf has used it. Wolf has been Wolf Hoffman from Accept. He's been using Kempers he was one of the first guys. The German connection. He knew Christoph, I think, before, and so Christoph Kemper went after him to use them, and so he signed on pretty early. And so he's been, and he's got all his old Marshalls profile. He's got the balls to the wall Marshall profile, the Restless and Wild Marshall. He's got all those old amps profiled.
Yeah.
It's interesting you should say that, Phil, because 2 of the co-hosts that we have here on the 5150 show are both Kemper fans. Jimmy V and John Conklin, and Jimmy V in particular. He's got a Van Halen tribute band, and he just plays through his Kemper, and the Kemper is always going to sound fantastic
consistently. That's the best thing with it on the road. It's going to sound the same. Like for today, we had a fly day. We're in California, and I brought a flash drive because I had a Kemper here for me. So I loaded my sounds on a flash drive, got here, put a flash drive, did a restore, and it's now my Kemper with all my sounds perfectly right. Wow, it's amazing. But if the guy you're talking about has that top Jimmy Van Halen pack, it is dead on. Can I cuss on this? Can I swear on this show?
You can say anything you want. You're a guest.
It is dead fucking on. It is the most fun to sit in a room or with headphones on and just with one of your Van Halen guitars.
Yeah.
And he's got one for every record. The first 6. And so you just sit through and like, okay, I'm going to play some Diver Down stuff now. And it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. It's like Jimmy Vumas uses a Kemper too, if I'm not mistaken.
Jimmy Vumas. He swears by it. Yeah. Can I just rewind a little bit, gentlemen, because you guys were saying something interesting, talking about music and tones and using your ears. It's an interesting idea that one of, again, my co-hosts, the Rock Professor, talks about. Back in the 60s, 70s and 80s and right up into the 90s, engineers and producers, Philip and Louis, were listening to everything that was being produced. Now, if you go and have a look at what engineers and producers are doing now, they're looking at a screen, and the Rock Professor's got this idea now that they see these waves, these things happening on the screen, and when they see, for example, something not happening, it's almost like this desire, this urgency, this need to put something there, because your eyes are seeing it blank, but necessarily shouldn't be there if you were using your ears.
Right. Yeah. It changes. Yeah. The visual element of music used to be just magazine photos and going to see a band. Now you can actually see the sound. Yeah. And see people do, it's a whole different thing. And it's, I'm not sitting here, reminiscing and bitching like an old guy. I mean, it may sound like I am, but I'm really not, but it's just different. Yeah. But everybody's always used, and this goes back as far as you want to go with recording technology. Everybody's always used the latest technology available to them.
Sure.
Like the Beatles used an 8-track the minute that EMI got them an 8-track. They weren't using 4 tracks because it was cool and vintage. They used a 4-track because it's all they had. Mm-hmm. And they were having the EMI engineers invent things for them, automatic double tracking, the DI box, headphones. You know, they always used all of those things that they had.
Yeah.
So, you know, 60 years on, it's going to be more advanced.
Yeah.
So
I want to bring up something that I see on the chat here, because it comes back to what you're doing. I think some people are saying that you look like Eddie, and I think I know why. So, Andrew, if you have a picture,
Give me
look
a second,
at Philip's
brother.
shirts and see if you see a similarity with a picture that Andrew's going to bring up for a second. Look at that. Are you wearing that on stage tonight?
you know what? I think I might have to do that.
So the funny part there is, as many of you know, I work for a high-end Italian shirt company, and I
better stand up. You better stand up, Philip, for a second.
Well, I've got no pants on, so I can't stand up very far. But yeah, I got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Here we go.
Sorry, Louis.
No, that's fine. So I ended up calling the warehouse manager in our factory in Italy, and I said, I need a shirt that looks like this, and I sent them a little picture of what Eddie was wearing, and thank God they found it. It must be a 20-year-old shirt, because it's a very 70s shirt, and it happened to be in his size. So I sent them 2 shirts, and I said, you have to remake that picture.
Great. So what I do, I've got my dog collar strap on my shark, so this is gonna happen. But he sent me this one, and he sent me a denim shirt, blue denim shirt. That is my favorite shirt that I own. So
excellent.
Thanks for those.
Favorite shirt, favorite strap. I can't go wrong here.
No, it's awesome.
So going back 1 second, because I had a quick question on when you toured with Gene and Ed, and Ace. Sorry, was it tube amps or Kempers as well?
We got the Kempers in the middle of the Gene tour.
Okay.
Because I think we had done our first international run, and you play the backline lottery and you lose a lot of times, and then so you spend your whole sound check trying to wrangle a tone out of a Marshall that hasn't been serviced for 25 years, and you end up that, and it's just a pain. So Ryan went first. Ryan got one. I'd recorded with them, but never played one live.
Gotcha.
And he was like, "You gotta come over and check this out."
Yeah.
It's like, he had a little 112 speaker. He's like, "You're gonna die." I'm like, "Okay, we'll see." And I went over and played through it. I'm like, "Damn it, I gotta have one." And it just and then Jeremy followed suit soon after. And then we all 3 had them, but we had the powered ones. So we had mine. I could power a full stack with mine. So I was running 2 cabinets.
Wow.
And once you do that, once you go to the dark side, as I call it, it solves so many problems. Like the losing the backline lottery. You don't lose it anymore. You plug in your stuff, you get your volume set, and you're done.
Yeah.
So if you're on a gig where you don't have any crew, then you can, it's like, okay, well, I'm done. Who else can I help? What can I get done? It just saves so much time. And saves you so many nerve endings from stressing out. Does this shirt match the curtains? Actually, it kind of does. Good eye. Good eye. Wow. Nice.
And we all know that the sound is half the battle, and then your fingers do the rest, right?
It is really, and it is, the Kemper does act like an amp. I know it's a profiler and things like that, and it's different. It's magic. I don't know how it works. It's incredible. But it does really dial in with volume knob and sensitivity and all that stuff. But, we're with Accept and with Rodney, we're, no stage volume with in-ears. But that's a different animal too to get used to. But when you're running it through a guitar cabinet with guitar speakers and the power amp, and it's pushing air, you can't tell.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can't tell the difference. It's great.
Nice. And you're just since we're on the guitar talk, you're on a Les Paul now, but we're on a Framus, if I'm correct, which is Hoff's model.
Yeah, with Accept, I used Wolf's Framus models, V's. I think the Framus V, they only make a Wolf Hoffman. Nice. They don't make another Flying V. So all those are that, and they're great. They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really high end. I mean, if you know Framus, they don't make cheap stuff. So they're great guitars. So now with Rodney, before my Rock and Roll Relics gets made, which is coming to me, is a company in California
nice.
owned by Billy Rowe from Buckcherry. They're making a custom for me, which I cannot wait to get my hands on.
Oh, nice.
And so, but until then, I'm playing this Les Paul that I've had for umpteen years, and it was wine red, but I've had the finish stripped off of it. Now it's dark natural wood, and you can still see it's still kind of dark red. It's really, really nice. But I always loved the Mick Ronson, Paul Kossoff look of a beat up Paul with no finish.
Yeah.
And mine is completely beat to hell. It looks great. It's worn. And then the Shark guitar. And I just bought an Epiphone Casino.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring that out too for some songs.
That's for the Beatles songs.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's great because when I first sent you the prototypes of your Strat, you sent me a picture, and not in the background, but when you sent me a picture of the Strat, there was the Les Paul there, and I immediately fell in love with it because you don't see many brown tops, and I didn't know if it was like that, but you just explained it. You took the finish off. But the great part is, I think your G string was broken, and I'm like, he's actually using that guitar.
It probably was. Here, I'll take a picture with this.
Yeah, but it was.
Yeah, it was. And it isn't an old one. Well, I guess it's kind of old now. It's probably it's like a 2007 or 6 or something. And yeah, it was a wine red. I don't know what model. It is a standard. I got it at Guitar Center.
Nice.
And it just ended up being the one I played most and the one I did the most. I did the most to alter it.
Nice. Oh, very cool. Hey, Jimmy, we were just talking about you.
Hey, Jimmy.
Jimmy's a local guy. Jimmy lives here in Fairfield, Connecticut with me, and he's he's in a Van Halen cover band. So I got to meet him for drinks one day soon, and you know how it is. Like I lived in New York my whole life and went to the Statue of Liberty probably zero times in my life. Like he's right here, but I got to make an effort to go see him. So
that's awesome. What's the band called? What's the Van Halen band called?
Jimmy is what's the name of his band, Andrew? It's
Halen CT.
Halen CT, correct.
Oh, Halen, Connecticut. Cool.
Yeah. Sorry, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And they just celebrated their 10th anniversary. Phil and Louis 2 weeks ago. They had their anniversary gig. Yeah. And that was kind of mind-blowing because me and a couple of the other co-hosts on the show were saying that they haven't been in bands for 10 months, let alone 10 years, So that's an achievement for a covers band to reach.
And same thing, like I've only seen them once, even though they're like locally, they're everywhere. I saw them maybe about 2-3 months ago, literally right down the street from me, and just went to say hi to Jimmy. And I have a Ripley, which I want to have him check out and actually play Top Jimmy on.
Oh yeah, I forgot you had the Ripley.
I have a Ripley. So the funny part is I have 2 amps, but I need more space. I'm like, Jimmy, how much space you got? Maybe we could check it out at your house because I don't have any space.
Oh wow! So did you learn the Right Now Ripley demo like the minute you got it? Like
you go learn the 3 Van Halen songs that are on a Ripley, yes, and then you forget about them and move on. Yeah. So it's it's in the other room, just in its case right now, but. I try not to play it too much, just because for me it's a meaningful guitar.
Incredible.
I bought it when I went out to Seattle to visit a friend, and just found it in a store. And Diablo Guitars out in Seattle. Yeah, and I never saw one, so I saw when I called some friends, and I'm like, should I? And they're like, we've never seen one in person, so get it. So it's there. Yeah.
Hey, Philip, so in the green room we were talking, and you mentioned that you're from Alabama, and that's fantastic and amazing. Can you tell us, because everybody has a story, and I'm sure a lot of folks in the chat will want to hear this. How did you get into music? What got you into guitar? Tell us that story, Phil.
Sure. My guitar story kind of began in Alabama, my playing guitar story, but I was born in Wisconsin. Okay. And my introduction to everything musical was my brother's record collection. My brother Kevin I only have one brother, and he's 13 years older than me. And so when I was, single digit, when I was a toddler, it was the late 70s, and he was in high school. So he had everything great, and Aerosmith was his favorite, And it was my favorite too. And I'm not sure if it was just because it was his favorite or they were the first ones in his alphabetically organized record collection that I would like finger through. So Aerosmith. Plus they had Toys in the Attic. That was a cool cover to me. And then the Draw the Line was a cool cover because it was a cartoon. There's a lot going on, but I like the music as well. And he was a drummer. And he was a drummer in a polka band, being Wisconsin.
Oh, that's great.
They were called the Polketeers. So the band practiced at his house at our place. And so I was he was putting me on his drum throne when I was like 3 years old with headphones on, like feet dangling, can't hit the pedals, but, bashing along to Aerosmith records.
That's great.
So it started there. And guitar, I noticed guitar because of a picture of Joe Perry. And it was in Live Bootleg. It was the one it's taken from behind Joe. And it's out the crowd, and he's wearing two guitars. I think he's got a Strat on his back and a Les Paul playing it, and he's got like leather pants tucked into cowboy boots, and and he's just the blonde streak in his hair. And there still is nobody cooler playing guitar than Joe Perry, and there never, ever, ever will be. And that had such an effect on me as a kid, seeing that, and I just loved all the pictures they always had on the sleeves. Like the Rocks sleeve, you needed a microscope to see all the stuff. And I'm sure I got one out at one point and just would sit there and listen to it and just stare at all the stuff. I was fascinated. And so that was my first thing with guitar. Then moved to Nebraska when I was 5. And then school bands program started. I wanted to play drums, but you had to have 2 years of piano to play drums. But I could already play Wipeout, but that didn't work. I told them that as a 15 years old. These kids can't play Wipeout. I can play Wipeout. It's like, sorry. So then it was like, well, I guess I can't play. It was, what am I going to play? It was a lightning decision. Went back to the Blues Brothers movie and the soundtrack, which I was completely obsessed with at that time. Yeah. And I thought Blue Lou Marini, the tenor sax player, was the coolest walking. So I was like, well, I can't play drums. Well, I'll play saxophone then. And so I picked up saxophone and then started doing that, and then picked up guitar right before we moved to Alabama when I was 13. So by this point, I'm doing all these things, and the saxophone, I ended up being really, really good and like getting first chair in every honor band in the state of Alabama throughout high school, and then playing some in college as well, doing jazz band, marching band, concert band, pep band, everything band. I was all that stuff. And then was playing guitar in high school, taking lessons from a guy, Jeff Beasley, at GT's Music in Decatur, Alabama, owned by Greg Bozeman, who I talk to those guys still. And that was my first kind of guitar store hangout. And I'm some super short-haired, completely dorky 13-year-old kid that just doesn't know what to do or say and is just out of place. And they were so cool to me. And that was where I started learning Van Halen songs, was from Jeff, because I was just getting into Van Halen. That's a story too. My older brother, Kevin, comes into play again, bought me my first CD player when I was 13, bought me a whole stereo, and he bought me 5 CDs. And one of them was the first Van Halen album. And I was hearing this in a really unique way, because from like age 10 on to 13, Beatles was my life. Mm-hmm. I saw A Hard Day's Night and got the Red Album, and it literally blew my head completely off. I was the only kid in Norfolk, Nebraska that was trying to, find sitar lessons and trying to find Nehru jackets and stuff. It was absolutely mind blowing. Yeah. So I didn't care about Whitesnake. I didn't care about Motley Crue, Bon Jovi. I could not have cared less. It was Beatles. Yep. So when he put, I get chills thinking about this. Complete life-altering moment. When he put on Van Halen 1 and skipped to track 2, it was, my world completely fell apart. I had never heard the people that he spawned. So this was me hearing it in 78. Yeah. It was the same thing. And it was like the sound was coming out of the paint and the walls. And there's still no other album that sounds like that.
Mm.
And it was just completely earth-shattering. I can
Yeah.
remember how it felt, man. It was crazy. And that was how I heard Van Halen the first time. And that was complete that way. Like
Yeah.
from that moment on, it was a complete left turn. And I was going to do that or my version of that. And there was no turning back after that.
Yeah.
Still played saxophone and guitar. But
cool.
that was I can't even describe the impact that had. It was earth-shattering.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? I want to echo just what you've said. That parallels exactly my experience when I was at high school in the fourth form, about 13 years old. I was a Beatles nut, Philip and Louis. I was listening to the Beatles, and all my friends were saying, "You're a nut job. That's old shit. What are you doing listening to that?" I was, Beatles for Sale. I just was in love with that Vox tone. And then a friend of mine said, "Come with me." And we went back to this back of the field, and back in the day, you had those tape decks. And he said, "Have a cigarette." So we're having a cigarette, and then he played exactly Van Halen, Eruption. And I remember walking back to class being giddy. I was faking. I was giddy because I hadn't heard anything like it. So I get exactly where you're coming from, Philip.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I kind of lived in a cave up until that point, because I didn't hear the people that came after him. I knew nothing of fast guitar. I'd heard Joe Perry, and I didn't know about this stuff. So hearing that was like hearing it in 1978. So I'm pretty lucky, I think, in that way, because it was just everybody that heard it. I mean, Louis, you got the same story. Everybody has the same story when they heard that. It was, and then for me, that came on. And then a couple more songs, and then "I'm the One" comes on, and it's just like sitting there going, I can't believe these guys are having this much fun playing music. This is perfect. It's like, this cannot get any better.
Yeah.
It's oh man.
That's great.
Swing, and you can just see them smiling, and just
that's
God,
great.
it doesn't get any better. It does not. It's amazing.
But you know what the funny part is? I'm a little younger than you. I was born in 77, so I didn't get into Van Halen until 1991 or 86 to 91. It was that area. I lived in Italy for a bunch of years and came back to the States in 1986, and that's when I started getting into Guns N' Roses and Kiss. And my brother was already into Kiss by that point. So OU 812 was my first introduction to Van Halen. And the great part about it is a lot of people were doing that tapping. I was into Vi at the time. I was into Vivian Campbell. All those guys were doing that sort of thing. But the thing that blew my mind, just like Eruption blew your mind, is the swing part of it. Eddie, by the time I was listening to him, the tapping was going on. All the cool stuff was going on. But I knew nobody that knew how to swing like Eddie. And I think that's what really got me into Eddie. It wasn't the Eruption, because obviously I learned of them in a different decade of their popularity, and my ear was already attuned to it. But when you listen to the swing, even I played a song today, and it's still hard for me to get into that swing. The guy was a genius at it.
It's just great, and that comes from
the
Al
polka
playing in his dad's big band,
the polka stuff, that music,
and that whole thing, like guys like him, guys like Ian Pace, guys like Bill Ward, were so closer in time to that. Their parents listened to the post World War II music, and the kids born around World War II, their parents were into that, and that's what they listened to at the house growing up, and that's in every Sabbath record. It's in every Deep Purple record. It's in every Thin Lizzy record. It's in every Van Halen record. And that is something that is going away just because, I mean, even when I do it, I think I do it pretty good because I am so conscious of it, not bragging, but you got to have that thing. But I still don't do it like somebody that's born a couple decades earlier than me.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. Like, rock and roll honky tonk, but like, barrel house piano, that kind of thing, like Jerry Lee Lewis thing that Don Airey does well. That's a dying art.
Yeah.
And it's just because those guys are from that time and they can do that thing so well. And it's It's just a thing that was there, and that, all rock and roll had a swing. Even metal had a swing and a swagger.
Yeah.
From those things.
What we would probably now consider more, heavy rock and roll more than metal.
Yeah, like Judas Priest, like the early Judas Priest stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, it has that has that in it, and it's just that's the thing. I'm sure you guys have seen Ben Eller, Uncle Ben, on YouTube. He's put out a couple great Van Halen videos lately, and one of them was Hang 'em High, and he really talks about the swing and Hang 'em High.
Watch that.
Because you don't realize it. He's the impossible. He's swinging that, and he only learned it when he slowed it down to hear how exactly he's like swinging those 16ths. So but when you speed it up, you can't hear, but he's swinging those. Yeah. So it was all over. Like, I'm the One is the good God, that thing is incredible. Yeah. To get that right is a whole other animal.
I was thrilled last night. My daughter plays viola, and so we went to her recital. And obviously, playing viola, she did Bach and Beethoven and Mozart. But there was a jazz band that opened up. And nothing against my daughter, but the jazz band blew my mind because they played some Herbie Hancock, and I'm like, wow! Look at these 9-year-olds playing Herbie. Like, that to me was more impressive, because I'm like, we listened to the Bach and Beethoven, but I'm like, for 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds to be playing Herbie Hancock, and they nailed it for their age.
They play Watermelon Man.
They played they played Chameleon.
Oh yeah,
they played Chameleon.
That one and Watermelon Man were jazz band standards for me in school.
Exactly. Too. Oh, that's right. You played, but it blew my mind, because I'm like, good for that teacher, because and it blew my mind that these kids are playing Herbie Hancock, and I'm like, this is great.
That's great. It's so great, because I think in jazz, that thing the swing thing will always live. In rock, it's going away.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite stuff is in rock is the swing element. Nobody swings like Ringo. But all that stuff from then on had this great element.
Yeah, you're right.
And people, with Ed, with the swing thing, another thing that people don't really get with him is the grease. I mean, he wasn't super Vi Satriani clean. He was knee deep in grease a lot of times, but it was but the swing was in there too. But I think in Ed's, he may have been just hearing him playing blues and playing Clapton, because that was the thing. When I always read Ed interviews, it's like he was this big Clapton fan. I'm like, wait, really?
Yeah.
He took
you don't hear it.
The Blues Breakers album, and somehow in here turned it into, that.
Yeah, correct.
And it's what a change. But then you get to it and you're like, okay, I can kind of hear some of it. But the blues thing, and everything's blues based, and the pattern thing is crazy, but it all had this greasy element to it that that you could dance to, which was amazing. And that was all Dave. That was all Rob.
It's funny you mention that, because I'm not a fast player. I'm not a tapper. As much as I'm a huge Van Halen fan, I don't play anything like Van Halen. But when I listen to a Van Halen song, I'm listening to the guitars in the background. I'm not listening to the main riff. I'm listening to the swing that's holding the song together, and that still blows my mind.
Yeah,
I was playing Dirty Movies yesterday, and I'm like, everybody expected me to do the slide part, and I'm like, no, I'm doing the simple part that's nice and solid, and just is a great on its own is a great little riff.
Yeah,
and I don't know how many people actually listen to that other than us guitarists, right? My friends are like, oh, that was great. I never heard it that way, because they're not true Van Halen fans.
Yeah, his rhythm playing is just absolutely untouchable, and just the way that when it was just one guitar track on the few that he became overdubbing later, but when it was just the band playing in a room, how it was like not just rhythm and lead, he would do turnarounds, and he would do he would fill in space with all these excuse me, crazy fills and licks, and then go back to the rhythm, and his rhythm playing is just untouchable, which goes to the swing thing.
I was gonna say, like you, he played drums, he played piano, he took piano lessons, and he had a brother who was a drummer. So it's gonna set in after a while, right? Like if I had a brother that played drums, I'd probably be a better guitar player.
Yeah, and it's so wild to think that those two guys never really played with another guitar player or drummer.
Right?
Like that was just those two guys playing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a side question?
Sure.
Did you ever meet him?
No.
You didn't?
No, I never did.
Because there's those 3 degrees of separation with Gene to like get to Ed, right?
Yeah,
So,
I never got to. I know Zeke Clark is a friend of mine. Zeke's a good friend. He's great. Who's Eddie's tech from, in the studio, I think from Fair Warning, but then he was on tour with him. He built the 5150 Kramer. He built that guitar. He's a sweetheart. No, never met A. Van Halen, never met Michael Anthony, never met Sammy Hagar, never met Dave.
Yeah. Interesting. It's always I never had a chance either. I came close once, but never had a chance.
Jeff did. Our friend Jeff Goebel went to the Smithsonian thing and got
That's
to meet
right.
him.
Yeah.
What a chance to do. And he said it was super easy and super low key, and it was just like everybody got to meet him. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was happening. How did you? That wasn't on my radar for some reason.
That was a great one. Yeah.
Incredible.
So, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated in the conversation around swing on albums and how that relates to an artist that we're listening to or an album that we're listening to and where they pick it up from, Phil and Louis.
Yeah.
The Rock Professor and Brad, who we rank album tracks every week on the channel. It's one of the components that we find familiar and that consistently links great albums is this component, this idea of swing. And a friend of mine a couple of years ago was trying to explain it to somebody else, and I heard a conversation, and he said, just go and listen to the Rolling Stones to get an idea of some swing. Go and listen to Sticky Fingers or Exile on Main Street to get an idea of swing, as opposed to what my friend was listening to at the time when they were having this conversation. He was, and again, this is no disrespect to Dream Theater. I love Dream Theater. But when you're listening to Dream Theater and then you go and listen to Sticky Fingers, remarkable. What you're going to get this instantly, this sonic idea of what swing is.
Yeah.
Philip.
Yeah.
As opposed to...
You're also going to have this other feeling in your pants that you don't get with Dream Theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's also going back to what we were talking about with seeing the WAV file. It's all lined up on the grid. And, you can't swing that way because the swing will go over the bar line. It's not going to be locked into a tempo. I mean, you can listen to Van Halen records and their tempos are fluctuating. They're playing a little bit faster on the chorus because that's just how it goes. And they'll pull it back for this part. It just doesn't have to be all lined up on grid.
Or even, I remember when I was younger and you try to tune to a Van Halen song and Eddie would tune like a slight below, E flat or
not even
or
a half step down. It was just
right.
It
would upset me so much. And then, or even lowering the B string so he would intonate the guitar a little bit better when we do double stops. And those little things is important in the mix of it. It makes him who he is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's really. I know you guys have watched the Sunset Sound interviews on. Oh man, those are fantastic. Those are so great.
Yeah. I was
hearing
watching
the room mics for Eruption, like oh my god.
I love listening to Steve Lukather talk about Eddie too because he's a monster player. Oh my god, he's such a monster.
I've heard. I gotta see if he reads his audio book because if he does, I gotta get that.
Yeah, me too.
I've heard his book is phenomenal.
Really? Okay, I gotta get it.
Yeah. So they've already got taken down, but did you guys see the Van Halen '84 fan doc?
Yeah,
they're already off.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I thought the first one, how it focused on, I didn't realize how big of an impact the Zappa studio had on Ed getting his. I knew he knew Frank and then got to know Dweezil, but those were really fascinating.
Yeah. There was obviously Andrew knows we're nerds, so a lot of that stuff we already knew. But there's a couple of tidbits in there that I didn't know as well. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I was always a huge Dweezil fan. I remember Dweezil being on a TV show when I was younger in the '90s. For God's sake, I forgot the name of the show. Yeah. But Dweezil, I went to see him a couple years ago. here in Ridgefield, Connecticut. He was giving a master class. He was just the sweetest guy, just the nicest guy. Yeah. Which was very
we
fun.
always supported what the Tape Archives does on his channel. You know, Louis, you know, people come into a subject at different levels of experience and different levels of knowledge. And one thing that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago when we did a 5150 show here on the channel was, you know, this docu-series was going to be really good for bringing in young and or new Van Halen fans, you know, because this is what people do. They go to YouTube and they watch stuff on YouTube. So, so we were supporting it from that point of view.
Absolutely.
And then obviously, you know, a week later, it gets pulled.
Yeah.
Which is,
no,
which I think it hurts really because there's not an official Van Halen. There's not an official doc.
No.
So until there is one, this stuff, all it does, I mean, there's Kiss ones that are
helps
out
the
there that are really
band.
good. It just helps the band. It just helps
Philip.
generate stuff. And then you can still do your own if you're going to do an official one. If it comes out in our lifetime, you know, do that. And people, guess what? The same people are still going to watch that one.
Absolutely.
You know? You're not going to lose anybody.
Knowledge is the key here, right? Like knowing what's out there. And there's a lot of us who are Van Halen nerds that, you know, either think we know what we know or, you know, rely on somebody else's notes. But I remember talking to Chris Gill once, and Chris Gill goes, the only thing I'll believe is a picture. You know, when talking about certain things, obviously, you know, if somebody says, I bought this guitar, I bought it off of Phil Shouse. And he goes, until you have a picture, I won't believe, you know, or paperwork or something real. And so it's important to have those things because I'm ready to go out tomorrow. I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble and buy the Guitar Player because they're doing a breakdown on David Gilmour's gear for, oh, you didn't see that yet?
No.
Oh, a Guitar Player is their next issue is going to be a breakdown of David Gilmour's gear through, I forget what album. But I'm going to go get it, even though I know what he was playing. We all know what he was playing. You want to see it and you want to be reassured of what's out there.
It's got to be Dark Side.
It's got to be Dark Side for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's got to be Dark Side.
I'll look it up. But it's always nice to have that information out there and available. Like I have 200 books on Eddie Van Halen, but I'll buy more books on bands that I don't know the history on. And I'm not certainly going to know everything about David Gilmour's sound. You know, I know what I know through research, but there might be other things that we don't know. So you're absolutely right. It's important to have these things out there.
Yeah. Probably does have a lot of Pete Cornish. I saw a comment about Pete Cornish, and I think Pete did build a lot of those guys, the British guys, pedal boards. So we'll have tons of Pete Cornish stuff in there.
But you're right though about this guitar information that people need. You know, if you guys aren't familiar with this book here, Rolling Stones Gear, it's a thick book written by Andy Beerback and another guy called Greg Provost, who's on Facebook. It's just phenomenal, the research, you know, and again, Chris Gill is hopefully going to be working on a book like this coming up, you know, with all the, he's done a book recently, 6-string stories for Eric Clapton. So, you know, there's a market for this, Phil. There's a market for it.
I've got Andy's Beatles gear book, which is fantastic as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is Dark Side, by the way.
Oh, it is? Hold on, brother. Let me present that.
Dark Side at 50.
Oh, got to get it.
Oh. Yeah, so I got to go out and get it tomorrow.
Because when Guitar Player, when Guitar Player do those specials, hold on for a second. They did one on Dwayne Allman. They did one on solos. They did one on the Rolling Stones. Get your yah-yahs out. They are man, the amount of research that those cats do for that magazine.
Yeah. It's necessary.
Yeah.
Especially going back.
That was my, like I you know, totally digested everything in those in high school. Yeah. Like I would learn every song and read every article, and you know, it'd have current people and it'd have classic people, and every issue was, you know, tons of history in it along with current stuff. And I mean, that's how I learned most everything really about a lot of rock bands were just reading those cover to cover. They're incredible.
Well, going back to what we were saying before with all these modeling amps, that's an interesting article for somebody. That's new information for somebody who's 15 years old, just playing out of modeling amps. And then,
Good point.
it's probably marketing too, because he's going to go buy 20 pedals and, and a whole bunch of vintage stuff. But that just fuels our industry, right? And fuels our passion. And so it's necessary. Absolutely.
And Dark Side of the Moon if he doesn't have it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Correct.
I know I would do that.
Who doesn't have Dark Side of the Moon?
I got turned on. I got turned on to so many things like that. Just the guitar magazines. That was just an invaluable resource for people.
This is what I did. April 10th, 2006, Radio City Music Hall. I went to see David Gilmour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was it was one of the things I needed to do. It's like the top 10 before I die is go see Gilmour.
Yeah.
And he hasn't toured, I think, since. He hasn't been around that much at all.
I don't think so.
So, he's one.
The last thing he did was the Peter Green tribute back before COVID. So when was that? 3 years ago.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's a monster player.
Yeah.
But even there, like I was thinking about that the other day. The use of tremolo between Eddie and Gilmour was totally different. They used the tremolo, but Gilmour used it more as an accentuation of a note, where Eddie used it as the main, theme of what he was doing in a lot of songs. But just practicing that for like somebody who's younger, those two ranges, and that's just two guitars. Imagine throwing 50 others on there.
Yeah.
Can I grab something while you're talking about? I'm going to grab a Strat and it relates to the story that you're talking about with Gilmour. Give me a second, guys.
Sure,
Give me a second.
Sure. Yeah.
Phil, do you use your tremolo a lot when you're at Accept?
No.
Yeah.
I only a couple things. It's like when I grab the bar, it sounds like Van Halen.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't tap, because when I tap, it sounds like Van Halen.
Van Halen, yeah.
And it's when I try to do Eddie kind of flavored things, it sounds like that. It's like it doesn't sound like me. It sounds like me in my Van Halen band.
Is it hard to play the Shark and not sound like Van Halen when you're on tour?
Yes, it is, because when you put the stripes on, there's something about that that's just like, I don't know if you guys are hearing what I'm hearing, but whenever I play out of this thing, sounds like Van Halen.
I'm sure it translates really well, though. It's got a great sound to it. No,
it's a very cool sound because it's got chunks out of it.
Yeah.
So it does have a pretty cool tone. It's really comfortable to play.
I'm sure.
Hangs great. Looks cool, and it was a gift from a friend, actually.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't get a chance to play it live except for one show. And then when I got the gig, it was like, what I'm going to bring out for a couple tunes, because we do Eruption in the show.
Oh, you do?
The Rodney show. Me and the fiddle player figured out a way to go back and forth.
No way.
We kind of do it. So I'm like, I'm bringing the Shark.
I want to see that.
That's why it's out.
And the good part is you have a neck pickup there too, so you have an option.
I can use it for other stuff. Use middle, so it's a good backup to have.
Yeah. Mikey needs a Shark. That's right.
Okay, guys, I just want to show you something. It's interesting, Louis, that you should talk about how Gilmour uses his trem, because a couple of years ago when I was going through this crazy nut Gilmour phase of my life, I was doing a lot of research, and so what he's done on his trem is he cuts his trem short compared. It's so it's quite short compared to the normal length of a trem,
so
and it's that short length that gives it that ability just to play it delicately, as opposed to a full length trem which you'll have to lean on.
Yeah.
It's more of an accentuation than a dive bomb.
Yes.
Let's say it's more of like he's making the note kind of flutter a little bit.
Correct. And having that short length, certainly. And when I did that, it was like, I swear I was channeling Gilmour.
Yeah, well,
that's it.
The great part is
really.
The great part is you can still pick and hold it with your like pinky a little bit and kind of like play around with it a little bit.
Yeah,
it doesn't get in the way.
Go and cut your trems, gentlemen.
Was the black Strat like that? I'm
assuming
they
were all
the black one
were like that.
Yeah.
Wow,
his black one had the
no
short.
idea.
Yeah, short trem.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture. I went to when they were doing the auction here at Christie's in New York. actually brought my daughter to. I'm like, you're coming to see some David Gilmour guitars with me, and it took a whole bunch. I know Mikey Mojo was there too. He went on a different day, but we were there, and you can literally go. You could have touched it if you wanted to, and I got some really up close pictures of the red Strat that you just showed, the black Strat, his number 1, the serial number 001. I'll send you guys a whole bunch of those pictures that I took back then.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and they all have the short tremolo arm on them.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't Jim Irsay buy the black?
I don't know.
The Indianapolis Colts owner is the NFL football team in the States.
Yeah,
he bought that one.
He owns everything else.
$2 million? $2 million or something like that?
Was it 2?
No, it was. I think it was 3 at the time.
Wow.
Wow.
I got to go to that New York exhibit, the Play It Loud.
Oh, you did go. So you saw the Frankie.
He owned about half the pieces in that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was everything had his name on it, which was that was a great exhibit. Wow, that was cool.
Oh, I think they needed to ask me to leave. I was staring at the Frankenstrat for like an hour. I think people were like, "You need to move on." Then I went to look at the Stevie Ray Vaughan because Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar was there too.
Yeah,
and that blew my mind.
They had in that one room, they had the Frankenstein. They had Jimmy Page's number 1. And they had Eric Clapton's Blackie Strat in the same room in case on glass pieces.
And right next
how
to
much insurance?
Right next to Frankie was also Jimi Hendrix Flying V.
The Flying V.
The Flying V was there. That was mind blowing too.
It was just that was which guitar I was surprised that it was kind of tucked away at the very end of the exhibit. It was the Strat Dylan went electric on.
Which one? Sorry.
That was at the end of the exhibit. It was kind of tucked away in a corner.
Really?
And it was like, that's it. That's the Judas. You know, I couldn't believe that one was that small. That one for some reason stuck out to me. It's like, this should be hanging up. You know, this should be hanging from the ceiling. You know,
right?
It's amazing.
The Black Strat sold for $3.975 million.
Wow, almost 4. Hey, Holly. We played. I don't think we played Exit In. We played 12th and Porter. Remember 12th and Porter? And we also played the Rutledge a lot, and we played the Basement a couple times. So yeah, we were. Somebody was asking what venues we played. The Van Halen played. The Van Halen band played in Nashville. So those places. Yeah, over $4 million. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and it still blows my mind. I'm not a huge fan, but the top 2, I think, most paid for guitars were Kurt Cobain's. One was a Martin, and one was and I'm like, really? And so Gilmour's up there. I think the Hot for Teachers that you sold was like 3rd.
I was gonna say, what did that go for?
Yeah, Andrew, remind me again because I got too many numbers in my head. What did that one sell for? Well, the chat should know.
That was $3 million. That was $3 million.
Mikey Mojo, there it is. 3.925.
3.925.
That beat Gilmour.
Right there, but you're thinking that wasn't even his main guitar. That was just like a backup guitar. So Frankie's got to be up there.
Didn't even play it hardly.
Priceless.
The 5150's got to be up there. So it's just they'll probably never come up for sale. But those they'll beat what's out there. The Cobain guitars easily. Yeah. We're all here because of those 3 guitars, for God's sakes.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going on tonight, and with Rodney, how many more gigs you got?
Yeah, we're just doing a one-off, and we fly home. We next week the Rodney schedule is pretty nice. It's the Nashville Weekend Warriors schedule. You head out for the weekend, do 2, 3, 4 shows. You're home for the week. You head out again on the weekend. So we're coming up in the busier time of the year. Spring, summer, fall. We hit it pretty hard. So
nice.
It's a nice schedule. So we pick up heading to Puerto Vallarta in a couple of weeks for an acoustic gig, and heading down a couple of days earlier with my girlfriend Joanna, and we're gonna go down there. And
very cool.
It's the gig's at a resort. It's an acoustic gig, so it's like, just go ahead and book me a couple of days in advance, and I'll see y'all down there.
I'll get there early. I'll do sound check.
So I'll scope it out for you guys. I'll advance it. So no, we're going down, but no, it's a really good time. It's a fun show. Like I said, I can't play country. I can't play country at all. And it's, I can do Southern rock and rock pretty well. And that's what this gig is. And it's any fan of, I think, most rock fans would dig it. And then the fans we have at the shows are really open-minded. And they Rodney's got a lot of hits, like 7 number ones over the years. And so they know those songs, but then they, see us playing them and they love us, they love rock. And it's a good time.
Nice.
And we're in Beaumont, California tonight.
Nice.
Brilliant.
Nice.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you aren't familiar with Philip and what he does, we'll attach his social media links to this channel. If you've managed to get this far into the show, we always appreciate the support that you guys have got. You give us, but we ask you please to go and support Louis. Sign up and subscribe to his socials, and obviously Philip's as well. It's been a great show, guys. Will you come back for part 2, Philip?
Absolutely. You tell me when.
Yeah, we'll organise something. It's been a great show. It's it's been fantastic hanging out with you and sharing these experiences, because that's what it's about. And Louis keeps saying it. These guitars and these guitar players and bands are responsible for doing lots of great things, Louis.
Yeah, you're right. Listen, we are here talking because of our shared passions of music and the bands associated to those musics. There's nothing greater, This is not work. It's probably work for Phil because he's got to go to work in a little bit. But it's a passion for all of us. Even deep down inside, I know Phil. It's a passion for him. And what do they say? You never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Find something you like. Yeah.
Yeah. So God bless.
Awesome. And again, we want to remind people to go to our channels page here. On our channels page is all our friends. Go and subscribe to them. It's really easy to do. A subscription to a YouTube channel helps that channel, and it doesn't cost you a thing. So subscribe to all your channels, and everybody who subscribes to our channel gets a sub back. We're not one of these channels that solicits subscriptions. We always give back. So if you want to build your own channel or your own social media links, let us know and we'll attach them here on our channel. That's what we're about. Louis, do you want to do a shout out, bro, before we end the show? Can you do that to everybody in the chat?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Mikey Mojo, Steve-O, Holly Lewis. I'm just scrolling back. They seem to have written a lot of stuff, so I'm Mikey Mojo. I'm sorry, I missed all this, guys. David Allen Wright, Fairfield Guitar Company commented on some things. Jimmy was here before. Jimmy Ray Hawkins. Hey, Jimmy Ray Hawkins. R2R3 was here. Holly Lewis. There we go. Those were the active guys on the chat tonight.
Awesome. Fantastic. It's been great hanging out with you and meeting you, Philip. We've connected on social media. So again, what we do, we've got a couple of Facebook groups that are attached to our channel. So we'll share any of your Facebook links for your gigs. We've got a couple of just small groups. One of our chats has about 14,000 members. So we like to share links. So again, it's the least we can do. And we were talking about this, weren't we, earlier in the green room. Never underestimate organic social media when you're trying to build a platform and connect with people. Get people to do it. Ask people to subscribe to your channel and ask people to share your links, because people are either going to do it or not.
Yeah. The choice is yours.
Choice is yours. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about it. Sorry, my brain's still thinking about Eruption with the fiddle player. I want to see that. I need a video. I need a video of that.
It was Jimmy's idea of the fiddle player, and then they were already kind of working it. And when word came that I was coming back into the band and doing the that, it was it's like, oh, Phil's back. We're doing Eruption now.
That's great.
We worked it out, but it's pretty fun.
There's a question there for you from David Allen Wright. Philip, do you want to get in touch with Zeke?
Oh yeah, if you talk to Zeke, please tell him I said hi. He's a wonderful guy.
Cool.
I was actually really lucky. Zeke, I got to know Zeke when I was doing the Van Halen band, and he came and saw us, so that was pressure. But he really loved it, and so after the show, and we were talking, and he goes, bring your guitar over, to the house. So Zeke was setting up my Van Halen guitar, and the one I had was a copy of the one he built. I was playing a 5150 Kramer. That my friend Dion, guitar maker in Nashville, Dion Edge, had built. Great guitar, I still have it. So I was taking it to Zeke, and Zeke was setting it up like
great.
He would set up Ed's. So it was pretty cool to get that kind of, get him on it too, get his mojo on that guitar.
That's great.
Awesome.
I forgot to mention Boner Jams. He actually contributed to your page, so thanks to him, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the contribution. We don't ask for contributions on this channel, but we always accept them. If
you
people
say Boner Jams?
Boner Jams, yeah.
Boner Jam. His name's Brian. He's a friend of the channel. He's he's a cool
the
guy.
church organization, I'm guessing.
Yeah. You got it, Phil.
That kind of went by. I'm like, wait, was that Boner?
Yeah, no, that's
good name. That's funny.
who he is. That's
right. Philip, do you want to have the last word because you're our guest, and then we'll cruise and we'll let you get ready for the gig?
Andrew, thanks again for having me on the show. Louis, always good to see you.
Same here. Thank you.
Again, we're how I know Louis is Fairfield Guitar Company. I've got my own signature strap that is extremely comfy and sharp looking as well. It's available for sale at Fairfield Guitar Company. So go check that out. And I do believe it's 5150 time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, gents. That's right.
I still have the 8812 shirt with that on the back.
We're out of here. See you guys later.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.